Sean Connery was offered the role of Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings trilogy with a massive back-end deal that could have earned him over $400 million. However, he turned it down, famously stating he didn't understand the script. Ian McKellen's performance became legendary, while Connery's decision is widely viewed as one of the most costly missed opportunities in film history. Eric Stoltz was actually cast and shot several scenes as Marty McFly before being replaced due to tonal differences. Michael J. Fox was eventually brought in, and his portrayal became legendary. Stoltz's involvement is still a major what if in film history, with footage occasionally resurfacing to fuel speculation. Sarah Michelle Gellar was offered the role of Cher in Clueless, but had to decline due to scheduling conflicts with her work on All My Children. Alicia Silverstone ultimately starred in the role, delivering a performance that became emblematic of 90s teen culture. Gellar found her own cultural moment later with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but Clueless remains a defining teen comedy. In a move he has since openly reflected on, Will Smith declined the role of Neo in The Matrix, choosing instead to star in Wild Wild West, a film that flopped both critically and commercially. Smith admitted he didn't fully grasp the Wachowskis' vision at the time and didn't want to hold the project back. Keanu Reeves ultimately stepped into the role, and The Matrix became a cultural and cinematic milestone, redefining action and sci-fi for a generation. Michelle Pfeiffer was initially offered the role of Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs, but declined due to concerns over the film's graphic violence and dark subject matter. Jodie Foster eventually took the role and won an Academy Award for her performance, with the movie becoming one of only 3 in history to win the Big Five Oscars. Pfeiffer later admitted to some regret, acknowledging the strength of the material. Before Scarlett Johansson made the role her own, Emily Blunt was the original choice for Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, in Iron Man 2. Scheduling conflicts with Gulliver's Travels forced her to withdraw, leading Marvel to cast Johansson, who would go on to become a central figure in the MCU. Blunt has since spoken about the decision without regret, but fans continue to wonder what her take on the role might have looked like. Gwyneth Paltrow was one of the frontrunners for the role of Rose in Titanic, but turned it down, paving the way for Kate Winslet's breakout performance. James Cameron reportedly fought to cast Winslet, and the film went on to dominate the box office and the Oscars. Paltrow has remained vague about the reasons, but her absence helped shape one of cinema's most beloved romantic leads. James Cameron approached Matt Damon for the lead role in Avatar, and even offered him a deal worth up to 10% of the film's profits. Damon declined due to scheduling conflicts with The Bourne Ultimatum, a decision he later described as the dumbest I ever made. The role went to Sam Worthington, and the title became the highest-grossing picture of all time. Julia Roberts was offered the role of Annie in Sleepless in Seattle, but passed, saying she didn't feel it was the right fit for her at the time. Meg Ryan stepped in and created one of the most beloved romantic performances of the decade, sparking her iconic pairing with Tom Hanks. Roberts, meanwhile, cemented her own legacy with Pretty Woman and Notting Hill. Tom Selleck was famously cast as Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark, but was forced to turn it down due to contractual obligations with Magnum, P.I. Despite filming a screen test and being Steven Spielberg's first choice, Selleck had to bow out, and the role went to Harrison Ford, who went on to define the character. The near miss remains one of Hollywood's most talked about casting what-ifs. Al Pacino was one of the top choices to play Han Solo in Star Wars, but he turned it down due to a lack of understanding of the script's tone and direction. In later interviews, Pacino said, "I didn't get it," pointing to the film's fantastical nature as a deal-breaker at the time. Harrison Ford's casting not only launched his career but also gave the saga one of its most enduring and charismatic heroes. Anne Hathaway was originally cast as Tiffany in Silver Linings Playbook, but creative differences with director David O. Russell led her to leave the project. Jennifer Lawrence stepped in and won an Academy Award for the role, launching a new phase in her career. Hathaway didn't publicly express regret, but the film's critical acclaim speaks to what might have been. Before Kristen Stewart was cast, Emily Browning was Stephenie Meyer's personal pick for Bella Swan in the Twilight franchise, but the actress declined to audition, citing exhaustion from previous roles. Stewart took the part, and the saga became a global phenomenon, launching her into superstardom. Browning later said she had no regrets, preferring roles that aligned with her indie sensibilities. Russell Crowe was offered the role of Wolverine in X-Men, but declined and recommended Hugh Jackman, who was then relatively unknown. Jackman would go on to play the character for nearly 2 decades. Crowe's referral changed the trajectory of Jackman's career, and possibly superhero movies in general. Mel Gibson was offered the role of Maximus in Gladiator, but declined, feeling he was too old for the part at the time. Russell Crowe stepped in and delivered a powerhouse performance that earned him an Oscar and cemented his status as a leading man. Gibson's decision allowed him to focus on directing, but the role of Maximus became one of the most defining of the early 2000s. John Travolta was offered the title role in Forrest Gump, but passed on it, reportedly to pursue other projects. The role ultimately went to Tom Hanks, who delivered one of the most iconic performances of the decade and won his second consecutive Oscar. Travolta later admitted that turning it down was a mistake, though his own 90s resurgence with Pulp Fiction softened the blow. Before Daniel Craig was cast, Hugh Jackman was approached to take over as James Bond in Casino Royale, but he declined due to concerns about being typecast after years as Wolverine. Craig's grittier take on 007 reinvigorated the franchise and introduced a new era of Bond films. Jackman has since expressed confidence in his decision, though the hypothetical remains intriguing to fans. Jack Nicholson was considered for Michael Corleone in The Godfather, but declined, feeling the role should go to an Italian-American actor. His decision cleared the path for Al Pacino, whose performance became one of the most acclaimed in film history. Nicholson's choice showed rare self-awareness in Hollywood and helped shape one of cinema's most iconic character arcs. Christina Applegate was offered the role of Elle Woods in Legally Blonde, but turned it down, concerned it was too similar to her Married, with Children character. The role ultimately went to Reese Witherspoon, who transformed it into a career-defining performance and a pop culture staple. Applegate later reiterated she didn't want to be typecast but praised Witherspoon's portrayal. Denzel Washington turned down the role of Detective David Mills in Say 7N, believing the script was too dark and disturbing. Brad Pitt ultimately took on the part, starring alongside Morgan Freeman in what became one of the defining thrillers of the 90s. Washington later admitted he regretted passing on the project after seeing the finished film's critical and commercial success. Before Viggo Mortensen joined the cast, Nicolas Cage was offered the role of Aragorn in Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy but declined due to family obligations and the extended shoot in New Zealand. Cage later expressed admiration for the films and Mortensen's portrayal, which became a defining role in fantasy cinema. The decision allowed Cage to pursue other projects, but few matched the epic scale he passed on. Paul Thomas Anderson wanted Leonardo DiCaprio for the role of Dirk Diggler in Boogie Nights, but DiCaprio turned it down to star in Titanic. The part went to Mark Wahlberg, who earned critical praise and redefined his career. DiCaprio has since praised the film and Anderson's work, while maintaining he made the right choice for his trajectory at the time. Bruce Willis turned down the role of Sam Wheat in Ghost, believing the romantic fantasy script wouldn't work. The role went to Patrick Swayze, whose chemistry with Demi Moore made the film a box office sensation. Ironically, Willis later starred in The Sixth Sense, another supernatural hit, this time with a very different tone. Tom Cruise was attached to play Tony Stark in various early versions of Iron Man, but talks fell through over creative differences and control over the project. Robert Downey Jr. was eventually cast, redefining his career and laying the foundation for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Richard Gere was considered for the role of Gordon Gekko in Wall Street, but passed, and the part went to Michael Douglas, who won an Oscar for it. Gere's decision opened the door for one of the most iconic portrayals of corporate greed ever captured on film. The phrase "too greed is good" became part of pop culture thanks to Douglas's chilling charisma.